Chapter 14, The Story of Noah. Begin all acts and thinking by using Al-Kalim the All. Tablet 1. The story of Utnafishtim Noah, son of Lamech. 19 times 24 equals 456. Lo! After the fall of the Anunnaki of Nar, Halal and his host of 200 jinns, Cain, son of Zakar and Nekeba, and his children lived with them in the Forbidden Zone, called by name the Land of Nod. After I sent you down the 23 Anunnaki, with the 24th seat being open to all the news bearers, the Anunnaki called the Sarufat. These 23 Anunnaki took mortal women to conceive sons and daughters of men, in order that we may become one with you in strength. But even after that you failed. The ancestors of Utnafishtim. Oh my friend, let me tell you of your ancestor Noah, born in 1056 of Adam's calendar in the flood. Noah rose up in the arms of the midwife named Zipporah, and he was covered with an overshowering Anunnaki from El-Rab, the sustainer of Zadok righteousness. When he opened his eyes, a beam of light came forth, and it lit up the whole tent like the sun. This light brought fear to whomever was present. He also spoke from the cradle. Lamech, father of Utnafishtim, thought that he might be a Jibbarine from the Nephilims. His wife Camilla assured him that Noah was his and her son only. As a child, we looked after him. Other children called him strange because he always cried during the sunlit days and rejoiced when the clouds filled the sky. He, Utnafishtim, never knew why water fell from his eyes in the sunlit days, but he was to see that great day of cleaning, a great fall of water as the water in his eyes. This was our son, Utnafishtim, who was great amongst men. He was born from the seed of Lamech when he was 182 years of age. As a babe, he cried day and shadow hour, yet my Anunnaki was with him. He, Lamech, was also called Malak, Malakan, and Laleh. Utnafishtim was born 69 years after Adafa Enoch ascended to heaven. At his birth, Halal cried with joy for victory over all mortals. All of his hosts celebrated. Their cries of joy could be heard from the sky to the depths of the sea. They awoke all the fish of the sea, and our son Zakar soul cried for his sons. Victory is mine, was the cry of Halal, for all Adamites have fallen to sin, and the whole earth lives under Nana, whose name was also sin. Sin is the new light of the earth, and now all men will be destroyed, yet I will have their souls. What a great time this is! And all the animals of the earth, and the birds of the sky, and even the fish of the sea cried for the Adamite soul, crying for 40 days and 40 shadow hours. Yet in the midst of all the fires of the spirit of Halal, there was a small spark of hope, a light. Utnafishtim, son of Lamech, son of Methuselah, son of Adafa, son of Jarad, son of Mahalaleel, son of Canaan, son of Enos, son of Seth, son of Zakar. He was the only mortal to cry with the animals of the earth, and the birds of the sky, and the fish of the sea. He alone felt the pains of them, being the first mortal to eat fish and animal flesh. At the age of 13, Utnafishtim ran away from his family into the woods, and there all the trees bowed to him, saying, "We have waited for you many years." Utnafishtim lived with them until he was 19, and he had no friends to speak to, except for the trees and the animals of the woods. He, Utnafishtim, learned how to speak the language of the animals, and when he raised his voice, they all came to him. He spoke to them about the fall of the Enoshites and the Adamites. He lived in joy with them from the age 13 to age 19. As the father of the animals, they called him Zu. So unto all the animals, he, Noah, was known as Zu. Utnafishtim begins to grow. At the age of 20, Utnafishtim, who is also called Zu-Sudra, travelled throughout the woods from the vine to vine. Then he departed from the woods to return to his own people to teach them about all that he had learned, only to find that they called him a fool. While Utnafishtim slept, a son of Halal paid him a visit and asked, "O apostle of Eli and Elionel, do you know what is to come?" It was at this point in Utnafishtim's life that he learned that he was an apostle of Eli and Elionel. Utnafishtim said, "I don't." A son of Halal said with a grin, "If you don't, nor do I." He laughed and flew away. Utnafishtim turned to a man that he knows, who was a good soul named Baxi, or Bakasi, and he asked, "Oh Baxi, what is going to happen?" Baxi said, "I will tell you." At that point, he began to cough. This was the first time any mortal made this sound, which sounded like thunder to the ears of Utnafishtim, and when Baxi sneezed, this was like the wind of a storm. Utnafishtim asked him, being a wise man, "What is that you are doing?" He said, "This is your answer. You must find the light in them." From that day on, Utnafishtim had a cold for 3 weeks. His eyes ran, his nose stopped up, and he coughed and sneezed, but he didn't know what it meant. Naama, Utnafishtim's newfound maid, laid Utnafishtim down to rest, and she covered him in mint leaves in his tent. Then she covered him in lambskin, and all his body was covered in water perspiration, but he still did not know its meaning. From then on, if man neglects his body, he will become ill. When Utnafishtim recovered at the age of 500, he went in unto his wife Naama, and she bore him 3 sons at once, triplets, and they called them Shem, Ham, and Japhet, when Utnafishtim was 500 years old. The triplets. Utnafishtim took unto himself his wife's handmaid Wala, and he went in unto her, and she gave him a son, and called his name Rhea. He was a playful son, and Utnafishtim loved him deeply. But Wala was the kind of woman who always asked, "Why is this and why is that?" Utnafishtim would say unto her, "O Wala, I need you to tie my tent right now." And Wala would ask, "Can't I do it later, O beloved husband?" Utnafishtim would say to her, "Let Rhea run with his brothers Shem, Ham, and Japhet," and she, Wala, would want him to be by her side. So he, Rhea, became the son of his mother Wala, rather than the son of his father Utnafishtim. So now was the time for Utnafishtim to be called, and he was sent to a ruler named Zuhak, and his people in the land of Enoch to guide them. But they only laughed and jeered at him, and they mocked the face veil that his and his sons' wives wore. They would pull their cloaks over their faces and point at Utnafishtim's women and call them fools. But Utnafishtim taught them from the hilltops to each tent. He yelled from the top of his voice to a whisper, but none of them listened. They only mocked him. The people, the Hurrians, under the ruler Zuhak, were worshippers of Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Nasser, and many other man-made deities. It was after all sorts of wicked and base acts that Elionel sent Utnafishtim to them. He was the first apostle to frighten people on account of their infidelity, and the first messenger at whose request a nation was destroyed, and the first person who will in the second creation raise his head from the earth after Ahmed, the last of the newsbearers of El Elo. The robe of prophecy. When the stature of Utnafishtim's ability had been invested in the robe of prophecy, El Shaddai, the Almighty, had dispatched him to preach to the inhabitants of the world. He was engaged in guiding and directing them for 950 years. A small company accepted his words, even though he suffered much persecution from the infidelity of those who turned back after having faith in him. He said, "My Creator, direct the people, for they don't know." They called him a practitioner of sorcery and a madman. Once, when he, Utnafishtim, was preaching after the marriage to his third wife Mubina, who was the sister of Fatwa, the wife of his brother Ayla, a prominent individual named Bassa by name went with him. He was only 150 years old. He, Bassa, commenced to admonish him, saying, "My son, know that this fellow is a magus, magician, and a liar. Take care, and don't abandon the faith of the ancestors, and don't be destroyed by his enticing words. Endeavour rather to distress him as much as possible, for this is the command of our fathers." During this insulting speech, some men of the town found the wife of Utnafishtim, Mubina, in the field, and they tried to rape her, for she was alone. These 6 men were sent by the ruler Zuhak to kill Utnafishtim, but they found instead his wife Mubina, sister of Fatwa, who was the sister of Utnafishtim's brother Ayla. The death of Mubina. But only after she killed 2 of them, Shaki and Radden, did she give her soul back to Elionel. Shah, Khan, Horlati, Buran. These 4 men went running back to Utnafishtim to help him build the ark, for they repented when they saw the Anunnakite Israel come for her Mubina's soul, and cursed them, saying that when they die, he would leave their souls in their body to rot with it. When Utnafishtim found out what they had done unto his wife, Utnafishtim asked, O sustainer of all things, giver and taker of life, will none of the progeny of this nation accept? Then the announcement came 100 years after Utnafishtim was 500. In his 600th year, Utnafishtim went to live on for 950 years. The pen of the divine will have thus decreed that none of the descendants of these wicked-hearted people should profess the unity of El, except those who already have faith. Man's wickedness is too great in the earth. All he thinks to do is evil. All the thoughts of his heart is evil continually. He killed my daughter Mabina. He is nothing but a shedder of blood and a violent killer. As the Allahum asked, and knew not, it is done. Now Utnafishtim was 500 years building this ark, and he was great in age, being the first man with wrinkles under his black eyes from many sleepless shadow hours, whereas Methuselah had his wrinkles from his age, being 969 years of age, waiting for the answer to his father Adapha's ascension from this plane to Malakut. Utnafishtim was short in stature and round in build, having a very sad face, for he cried more than any man. He had dark skin, with very thick and black woolly hair. He always dressed in white, and all his women kept their faces covered from the sight of men after Mabina's death. At 13 years old, the Anunnaki gave him an ebony seed. After 40 years, when he was 53 years old, it grew to full size. From it was the coffin to be made. This tree grew 100 feet in height, in which the body of Zakar was to be laid, until man found his way back to the garden in Malakut, at which time he is to be buried there. Utnafishtim never wore sandals. He was always barefoot. He loved to walk, and he always cried as he walked from place to place. Those who work in the way of El. Now these are the sons and wives of Utnafishtim, those that would be saved with Utnafishtim and his mate Naamah, Shem and his mate Fatin, Ham and his mate Halima, Japheth and his wife Ifat, Rhea, who never had a wife, played with a unicorn and drowned in the great fall of water from heaven. And from Shem we get Arphaxad, and from his son we get Salah, and from his sons we get Eber, and from his sons we get Thamud, and from his sons we get Peleg, and from his sons we get Reu, and from his son we get Serug, and from his son we get Nahor, and from his son we get Terah, and you came from him, my friend Abraham. And from Ham and Hamillah we get Cush, whose mate was Nabala, and from them we get Nuba the pure, whose mate was called Sorda, and from Japheth and his wife Ifat we get Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yoan, Tubal, Meshech, Tyaz, and from their sons we get Chin, Turk, Kars, Baraj, Manshaj and Rush. Now these are the souls of those to be saved in the great fall of water from the sky. And 20 of the 200 Garubat returned after the deluge to earth to rebuild their city of Nod, and it was called Sodom. And the mate of Utnafishtim Wala, mother of Rhea, also died in the great fall of water from the sky. Utnafishtim is also called Bashka, and some called him Adam the second time. And Zusudra, he is exceedingly wise, or Utnafishtim, but his name was Namasalil and Neham. This Noah, a good man on earth and a good man in the heavens. Now you must build a craft to save your family. We commanded Noah. We left ploughs, pruning shears, and all the tools that he taught men to use, being a great farmer, and he was the founder of many things grown on earth. When Noah, son of Lamech, son of Methuselah, son of Adapha, son of Jarad, son of Mahalaleel, son of Canaan, son of Enos, son of Seth, son of Zakar, was 600 years old, in 1656 of the time of Adam, a dramatic event occurred. The beginning of the flood. It was the second day of the second month, in the hour of Asr, that the deluge flood began. Within 40 days and 40 shadow hours, about 17,022 feet of water covered the ground outside the ark. The highest mountain tops were covered, and all life except that which existed in the water, which is outside of the ark, perished. The great deluge did not come from a cloud, as the waters of rain. Instead, it came from the canopy of water that surrounded the earth. This canopy, if you recall, came from the heavy vapors that encircled the young planet. The other rings that had fallen earlier in creation had cooled the planet and formed the lakes and rivers. With the falling of the canopy in the time of Utnafishtim, more warmth and sunlight was permitted in the face of the earth. The flood, meaning the outpouring of water upon the earth, lasted for 40 days and 40 shadow hours. However, Noah pleaded for him and his family to be saved. His sons took them wives from the disagreeable seed of the people of Nod. Noah, son of Lamech and Camilla, son of Methuselah and Sa'at, also called Nala, son of Adapha and Taliba, son of Jarad and Afifa, son of Mahalaleel and Zainab, son of Canaan and Jamila, son of Enos and Akilat, son of Seth and Aklamiah, son of Zakar and Nekeba, had to remain in the ark for an entire year. It took that long for the water on earth to dry up. Thus, in the year 1657 of Adam's time, the family of Utnafishtim disembarked. These Elohim are the descendants of Utnafishtim, who were to become of the Zodokite priesthood, trustworthy and perfect in all his genealogy. And Utnafishtim spent his time in the company of the agreeable Anunnaki. And Naamah, she who sleeps, the confident wife of Noah Utnafishtim, gave birth to triplet children named Shem, he who is of the rocket ship, Ham, burnt black skin, and Japhet, he who added on. And everybody else in the earth was going to ruin in the presence of the Anunnaki, and they were filled with nothing but violence. And the Anunnaki took a good look at the planet Earth and saw that it was in a state of total ruin, and all those born in the flesh had become evil, disagreeable, and wasn't following Yahuwah's commandments. And the Anunnaki said to Utnafishtim, the end has come for all beings of flesh, because the planet Earth is now filled with violence in the presence of the holy ones. I will wipe out all those born in the flesh from the planet Earth. So Noah pleaded for him and his family, and the Anunnaki Enki suggested that he build a craft for himself of timber trees with compartments, and cover it on both sides, inside and out, with tar. And this is exactly how big it should be made. The length of the craft should be 450 feet long. The width of it was 75 feet wide, and the height of it was 45 feet high. Put a window in the craft. You should finish it and make a door high up for the craft. You should put inside of it a lower level, a second and a third, because I, Yahuwah, yes, I myself am going to bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to wipe out all flesh in which my divine soul lives. Everything under the skies that is on the planet Earth will perish, but I am going to make an agreement with you and with your immediate family, for they will be allowed to enter the craft along with 80 other people. That is, only your confident wife, Naamah, your children and their confident wives. Also take from every living thing cells, wives like yourself and your wife, for future reproduction into the craft also, and keep them alive, of the species of birds, and all of the non-speaking mammals after their own species, of every reptile and of their species, and you are responsible for keeping these cells alive. Make sure you take enough food for yourself to eat, and this is what you should eat during your stay in the craft. Yahuwah said to Utnafishtim, bring yourself and your whole house into the craft, for I have seen you act as a Zodokite, righteous one, in front of my face in this genealogy. You are to take 7 of every clean non-speaking mammal for food, the male living beings and the female living beings, and of the non-speaking mammals, genus Homo, Homo erectus and Shaggies, that are not clean for food. Take sets of 2, the male living beings and the female living beings, also of the birds of the skies. Take them by 7s, the Zakarites and the Nekebites, to keep the seed alive on the face of all the planet Earth. 7 days from now I will make it rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 shadow hours. And every living being that I have fashioned I will ruin, and remove from off the surface of the planet Earth. And Utnafishtim fashioned things according to all that the Yahuwah of the Elohim Enki commanded him. Utnafishtim was 600 years old when the flood of the waters covered the land of Sumer and the whole planet Earth. And Utnafishtim went into the ship, he and his children, who lived in the land of Sumer. Shem, he who is of the rocket ship, Ham, burnt black skin, and Japhet, he who added on, and his wife Naamah, she who sleeps, and his sons' wives, Fatin, little girl, Halima, cement, and Ifat, virtue, chastity, all went with him. They went into the craft because of the water from the flood. All of the non-speaking mammals clean for food, all of the non-speaking mammals unclean for food, all of the non-speaking mammals, genus Homo, Homo erectus, shaggies and birds, and every kind of creeping thing of the planet Earth went into the craft in pairs with Utnafishtim, the Zakarites and the Nekebites, just as the Anunnaki had conveyed the commands. And the waters of the flood came 7 days later on the planet Earth, in the 600th year of the life of Utnafishtim, in the 2nd month of the 17th day of the month. On that very same day, all of the fountains of the Rab Sustainer and of the deep sea Tiamat in the planet Earth broke upon and poured out water, and the windows of the sky up there, where there is water, also opened. And the rain was upon the planet Earth for 40 days and 40 shadow hours. In that same day, they all went into the craft with Utnafishtim in twos, and 2 of every living animal with skin, wherein there is a soul of every living human animal. And as they all went in, the Zacharites and the Caboites of skin, just as the Anunnaki conveyed to him, and Yahuwah shut him in. And the flood lasted for 40 days upon the planet Earth, and the waters increased, and the craft rose up and it flew, and it was lifted up above the planet Earth. The waters became deeper and increased upon the planet Earth, and the craft first went about upon the surface of the waters, and the waters became so deep and exceedingly great upon the planet Earth, and all the highest mountains under it, beneath the skies, they were covered, and the waters were 25 feet above the mountains, and they were covered. Everything with skin that moved about upon the surface of the planet Earth perished, both the birds and the non-speaking animals, genus Homo, Homo erectus, shaggies and the living animal, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the planet Earth, and every Adamite Homo sapien, everything in whose nostril was the breath of divine life, of all kind that was in the desert died. Every being was destroyed who was upon the surface of the planet Earth, and Utnafishtim alone remained, and all those that were with him in the craft. The waters lasted for 150 days, and the Anunnaki remembered Utnafishtim and all of the living things, and all of the non-speaking mammals that was with him in the craft. And the Anunnaki made by his soul a wind to blow, and pass over the planet Earth, and the waters decreased, and the fountains also of the deep sea of Tiamat, and the windows of up there, where there is water, was stopped, and the rain from up there, where there is water, was kept back. And the waters returned from that part of the planet Earth, and it took 150 days, and the waters were kept back. And the craft rested downward, landed on the 17th day of the 17th month upon the mountain of Arafat, for the great craft in the sky had lifted it from the water that it hovered above the surface of the water. When it was over, it lowered the craft downward, that it may rest upon the water again. And the waters eventually stopped on the 1st day of the 10th month, and the tops of the mountains became seen. And at the end of the 40 days, Utnafishtim opened the window of the craft which he had fashioned. And he sent out a raven, which went forth and returned until the waters were completely gone. So also he sent out a dove to see if the waters had gone down. But the dove did not find any place to settle down for the sole of her foot, and she returned to him in the craft, because the waters were still all over the surface of the planet Earth. Then Utnafishtim put forth his hands, and took her and pulled her into the craft. So Utnafishtim waited another 7 days, and again he sent the dove out the craft, and the dove came back to him, Utnafishtim, in the dust, and in her mouth there was an olive leaf freshly picked. So Utnafishtim knew that the waters had withdrawn off the face of the planet Earth. And Utnafishtim waited another 7 days, and sent the dove out again, and it did not return to him any more. And when Utnafishtim was 601 years old, on the 1st day of the 1st month, all the waters had gone from off the surface of the planet Earth. And Utnafishtim removed the covering of the craft, and looked, and saw the surface of where the Adamites Homo sapien lived, and it was dry. By the 27th day of the 2nd month, the planet Earth was completely dry, and the Elohim the Anunnaki spoke to Utnafishtim, saying, "Go out the craft, you and your wife Naama, she who sleeps, and your children Shem, Ham, and Japhet, and your children's mates Fat in Halima, and a newly born son Canaan, and Ifat with them. Take out with you all of the living things that is with you of skin, both bird and of the non-speaking mammals, of every creeping thing that creeps upon the planet Earth, so that they can swarm all over the planet Earth, and be fruitful, and become many on the planet Earth." So Utnafishtim and those with him went out of the craft, and Utnafishtim built an altar to Yahuwah, and took one for each clean species for food animals, and clean for food birds, and went up on it to be raised on the altar. And Yahuwah smelt the soothing aroma for the feast being cooked by Utnafishtim, and Yahuwah said in his heart, "I will never again smite the Adamites Homo sapiens, ever again, because of what was fashioned in the Adamites' hearts of disagreeable things from his earlier life." nor will I ever again smite every living thing as I have done. And as long as the planet Earth remained, offspring and harvest, and cold and hot, summer and winter, and day and shadow hours will not stop. And the Anunnaki blessed Utnafishtim, so that they would not have to work the mines, and said to them, the same as they said to the other Adam, be fruitful and multiply, and refill the planet Earth. And all the living animals of the planet Earth will fear you, Utnafishtim, all the birds of the skies, and all that moves about, Adamites, Homo sapiens of the ground, and all of the fishes of the sea in your hands, and under your power they are appointed. All of the living animals moving about are good for consumption as food now for you, even as the vegetation and herbs were originally appointed to you as food. But those skins that have living spirits there in it, which still have blood clots in it, you are not to consume of its flesh, to shed your own blood, to kill each other's living spirits of Adamites. Homo sapiens will be punished. I will punish with my hands all living animals who will kill Adamites, their own brother Adamites. Whoever kill Adamites, Homo sapiens, by shedding his blood, that is by other Adamites, will his own blood be shed, because Adamites were fashioned in the image of the Anunnaki. And you are to be fruitful and multiply, and bring forth abundantly in the planet Earth, and multiply therein. And the Anunnaki said to Utnafishtim and his children who were with him, saying, and I looked, and I considered, and I will establish my covenant with you all, and with your seed after you, and with every living spirit, which is with you all, Adamites and Enoshites, Homo sapiens, the fowls, the non-speaking mammals, cattle, and every non-domestic animal of the planet Earth with you all, and from all that go out of the craft, and to every animal of the planet Earth, and I will establish my covenant with you all. Neither shall all those in skin be cut off again from the waters of the flood, and there shall not be another flood to destroy the planet Earth. And the Anunnaki said, this is the distinguishing mark of the covenant which I make between me and you, and all of the living spirits, which is with you all for generations. I set my bow around the round ship Nibiru in the clouds, and it will be a distinguishing mark of the covenant between me and the planet Earth. And in time to come, when I bring a cloud over the planet Earth, that the bow-shaped ship will be seen in the cloud skies, I will remember my covenant which is between me and you, all and every living spirit of all beings in skin, and the waters will not come again to destroy all those beings in skin. And a round ship shaped like a bow Nibiru will be in the cloud skies, and between every living spirit of all those beings in skin that is upon the planet Earth. And the Anunnaki said to Utnafishtim, this is the covenant of the covenant which I have established between me and all those in skin which are upon the planet Earth. And the children of Utnafishtim, those going out from the craft, were Shem, Ham, Japhet, and Ham is the father of Canaan, Lowlander, who was born in the craft an albino with leprosy. 3 Elos were the sons from Utnafishtim, and of them was all the planet Earth scattered. And Utnafishtim, being one of the first farmers, defiled himself to become a human being as Adamites, Homo sapiens, and planted a vineyard. He gathered the grapes from his vineyard and made wine and drank it. He did not know the effects the wine would have on him, and he drank from the wine and became drunk, and he undressed and was naked in the middle of his tabernacle. Besides what you have been taught, the story of Genesis 9:18 was a prelude to the event of the flood. The vineyard was planted before Utnafishtim and his family went on the craft, and this is seen in the mere fact that the dove was able to find an olive leaf after the flood. The Bible makes the mistake of giving the impression that Utnafishtim came out of the craft or ark and he immediately planted the vineyard and drank from it on that instance. However, the Bible leaves out a very important element, that is time. It takes time and years for a vineyard to grow, and Utnafishtim planted his vineyard before he went on the craft, before the birth of Canaan. And he drank the wine from the grapes of the vine, and became drunk, and laid in his tent naked. And Ham, the father of Canaan, Lowlander the albino, saw the nudity of his father Utnafishtim, and made it known to his other 2 brothers outside of the tabernacle. And Shem and Japhet took the outer mantle of dress, and placed it upon their shoulder, and went in backward, and covered the nudity of their father, and their faces were backward, and they did not see their father's nudity. And Utnafishtim woke from his wine drunkenness, and knew what his youngest child had done to him. And he, Noah, son of Lamech, which means overthrower, a strong young man, said to Ham, the curse will be upon your son Canaan the albino, a slave avid worker of slaves, Lulu Amalu. He will be to his brothers the Shemites and Japhethites, the non-albinos. And he, Utnafishtim, said, blessed is he Yahuwah, who is of the Anunnaki of Shem, and Canaan will be his slave worker. For the albinos were to become the slaves of the non-albinos. The Anunnaki will enlarge Japheth, and he will be in the tabernacle of Shem, and Canaan will be his slave avid worker. Albinos will work for the non-albinos.